Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. This is Joe, the bearded historian. He'll tell you an interesting story. Be careful of his soldiers, they can be brats. This is Angel, she's an entity. She'll cause chaos and plant her hands at you. This is Sue, she likes spirits, not the alcohol. She's the reason this channel exists. This is David, he likes fire trucks. He's here occasionally. Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. We preserve his story. Happy 4th. And this is Wayback Wednesday. Right to the 4th. Ready? Here we go. Shout out time. Here's a shout out just for you. You support me, so I support you. The shout out is for our friend. See who it is today. You'll spin me right round, baby, right round, like a record player, right round, baby. Oh, Sandra. Okay. Alright, so hang on a minute. Okay, Sandra Pink Investigation. Sandra Pink Paranormal, I can read. Welcome to channel with family of paranormal investigators, abandoned places, explorers, go haunted places, cemeteries, abandoned places. They're located in Quebec, Canada. Happy belated Canadian Day. If you're into paranormal, exploring, scary stories, check her out, like, share, comment, and have a good day. Alright, Mr. Bud, it's 11 o'clock at night, a quarter after 11 o'clock at night. Tell us something interesting.
Well, I was going to hash out a little bit of information about the July 4th events that are going on, for those of you who still have hearing. If not, just turn on the closed captioning and read along. The Independence Day, known colloquially as the 4th of July. Everybody has a 4th of July, just the United States chooses to use it as their Independence Day. Now, this was anchored on the date which was ratified by our Second Continental Congress, July 4th, 1776, establishing the United States of America. Now, the founding father delegates of the Second Continental Congress declared that the 13 colonies were no longer subject and subordinate to the monarch of Britain, King George III, and were now united, free, and independent states. That's why we're not 50 countries, we're states. The Congress voted to approve independence by passing the Lee Resolution on July the 2nd and adopted the Declaration of Independence 2 days later on July the 4th. Now, Independence Day, as we have known and heard, is commonly associated with fireworks, parades, barbecues, carnivals, fairs, picnics, concerts, baseball games, family reunions, political speeches, and ceremonies, in addition to various other public and private events celebrating the history, government, and traditions of the United States, and it is a national day in the United States. Duh. Now, during the American Revolution, the legal separation of the 13 colonies from Great Britain in 1776 again occurred 2 days prior, when the Second Continental Congress voted to approve a resolution of independence that had been proposed in June by Richard Henry Lee of Virginia, declaring the United States independent from Great Britain's rule. Now, after voting for independence, Congress turns its attention to the Declaration of Independence, a statement explaining the decision which had been prepared by a committee of 5 with Thomas Jefferson as the principal author. Now, while Johnson consulted extensively with the other 4 members of the committee of 5, he largely wrote the Declaration of Independence in isolation over 17 days.
Wow. Between
June 11th, 1776 and June 28th, 1776, from the second floor he was renting in a 3-story private home on 700 Market Street in Philadelphia, now known as the Declaration House, within walking distance of Independence Hall. Now, Congress, just like every good politics, debated and revised the wording of the Declaration, removing Jefferson's vigorous denunciation of King George III for importing slave trade, finally approved it 2 days later on July 4th. A day earlier, John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail The second day of June, 1776, will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as a day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, and from this time forward forevermore. Pretty much. Anyway, his prediction is only off by 2 days. From the outset, Americans celebrated independence on the 4th, the date shown as the much publicized Declaration of Independence, rather than on the 2nd, the date the Resolution of Independence was approved. Historians have long disputed whether members of Congress signed the Declaration of Independence on the 24th, even though Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Ben Franklin all later wrote that they had signed it on that day. Most historians have concluded that the Declaration was signed nearly a month after its adoption on August the 2nd, and not on July 4th as commonly believed. Now, interestingly enough, by a remarkable coincidence, both Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, the only two signatories of the Declaration of Independence later to serve as presidents of the United States, both died on the same day. July 4th, 1826, 50th anniversary of the Declaration.
Well, that seems like fate or something.
And although not a signatory of the Declaration of Independence, James Monroe, also a founding father, who was elected president, also died on July the 4th, 1831, making him the third president who died on the anniversary of independence. The only president to have been born on Independence Day? Calvin Coolidge, in 1872. Now, in 1777, 13 gunshots were fired in salute, once in the morning and once again in the evening, on July 4th in Bristol, Rhode Island. An article in the July 18, 1777 issue of the Virginia Gazette noted a celebration in Philadelphia was a manner of modern America would find familiar. An official dinner for the Continental Congress, toasts, 13-gun salutes, speeches, prayers, music, parades, troop reviews, and fireworks. Ships in the port were decked with red, white, and blue bunting. The year later, in 1778, from his headquarters at Ross Hall, near New Brunswick, New Jersey, General George Washington marked the 4th with a double ration of rum. Woo!
Woo! Not
pretty much.
Alcohol.
And for his soldiers. Now there's an idea. Let's give men who are armed with rifles booze.
What could possibly go wrong with this?
And they also had an artillery salute.
What could possibly go wrong with this?
Let's bring out the cannons. Across the Atlantic Ocean, Ambassadors John Adams and Benjamin Franklin had a dinner for their fellow Americans in Paris, France. In 1779, the July 4th fell on a Sunday, and the holiday was celebrated on Monday, July the 5th. In 1781, the Massachusetts General Court became the first state legislature to recognize the July 4th as a state celebration. And in 1783, Salem, North Carolina, held a celebration with a challenging music program assembled by Johann Friedrich Peter entitled The Psalm of Joy. The town claims it was the first public July 4th event and was carefully documented by the Moravian Church, and there are no government records of any earlier celebrations. In 1870, the United States Congress made Independence Day an unpaid holiday for federal employees. And in 1938, Congress changed Independence Day to a paid federal holiday. Now, some of the customs, as a national holiday, is marked by patriotic displays, federal holidays, so all non-essential federal institutions, such as the Postal Service and federal courts, are closed on that day. And while the legal holiday remains on July the 4th, if that date happens to be a Saturday or Sunday, then federal government employees will instead take the next day off on the adjacent Friday or Monday, respectively. Families often celebrate Independence Day by hosting or attending a picnic or barbecue. Many take advantage of the day off, and in some years, a long weekend to gather with family members or friends. Decorations like streamers, balloons, and clothing are generally colored red, white, and blue, the colors of the American flag. Parades are often held in the morning before family get-togethers, while fireworks displays occur in the evening after it's dark at such places as parks, sporting events, fairgrounds, public shorelines, or town squares. The night before the 4th was once a focal point of celebrations, marked by raucous gatherings of incorporating bonfires as their centerpiece. In New England, towns competed to build towering pyramids assembled from barrels and casks. They were lit at nightfall to usher in the celebration. The highest were in Salem, Massachusetts, with pyramids composed of as many as 40 tiers of barrels. These made the tallest bonfires ever recorded, and the custom flourished in the 19th and 20th centuries and is still practiced in some New England towns. Independence Day fireworks are often accompanied by patriotic songs such as the Star-Spangled Banner, the national anthem, Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean, God Bless America, America the Beautiful, My Country 'Tis of Thee, This Land is Your Land, Stars and Stripes Forever, Yankee Doodle, Dixie in southern states, Lift Every Voice and Sing, and occasionally but has nominally fallen out of favor, Hail Columbia. Some of the lyrics recall images of the Revolutionary War or War of 1812. Fireworks shows are held in many states, and many fireworks are sold for personal use or as an alternative to a public show. Safety concerns have led some states to ban fireworks or limit the sizes or types of the ones allowed. In addition, local and regional conditions may dictate whether the sale or use of fireworks in an area are even allowed. For example, the global supply chain crisis following COVID-19 pandemic forced cancellations of some shows. Some local or regional fireworks sales are limited or prohibited because of dry weather or other specific concerns. Up here with the pine beetle epidemic problems, they did shut down Mount Rushmore for a number of years. On these occasions, the public may be prohibited from purchasing or discharging fireworks, but professional displays like those at sporting events may still take place. In our case, we have the Post-22. A salute of one gun for each state in the United States, called a Salute to the Union, is fired on Independence Day at noon by any capable military base. Now, the New York City has the largest fireworks display in the country, sponsored by Macy's. Get this, 22 tons.
Why am I surprised it's sponsored by Macy's?
Because Macy's has got a lot of money.
And they do parade, so you'd think that wouldn't surprise me, but it did. When you said Macy's, I'm like, what?
Yeah. 22 tons of pyrotechnics exploded in 2009. It generally holds displays in the East River. Other major displays are Seattle on Lake Union, in San Diego over Mission Bay, in Boston on the Charles River, in Philadelphia over the Philadelphia Museum of Art, in San Francisco over the San Francisco Bay, and on the National Mall in D.C. During the annual Windsor-Detroit International Freedom Festival in Detroit, Michigan, hosts one of the largest fireworks displays in North America over the Detroit River to celebrate Independence Day in conjunction with Windsor, Ontario's celebration of Canada Day. The first week of July is typically one of the busiest United States travel periods of the year,
Right.
as many people are often on a 3-day holiday weekend for extended vacation trips. Some of the other notable celebrations that they mention, in 1785, the Bristol 4th of July Parade is the oldest continuous Independence Day celebration in the United States. And close to home, in 1868, Seward, Nebraska, has held a celebration on the same town square. In 1979, Seward was designated America's 4th of July small town USA by a resolution of Congress. Seward also has been proclaimed Nebraska's official 4th of July city by Governor J. James Exxon in proclamation. Seward is a town of 6,000, but swells to over 40,000 during the 4th of July celebrations.
Have to look up and see where that's at.
Yeah. Since 1912, the Rebuild Society, a Danish-American friendship organization, has held a July 4th weekend festival that serves as a homecoming for Danish Americans in the rebuilt hills of Denmark. And since 1959, the International Freedom Festival is jointly held in Detroit, Michigan, and Windsor, Ontario, during the last week of June each year as a mutual celebration of Independence Day and Canada Day. It culminates with a large fireworks display over the Detroit River. Now, again mentioning the famous Macy's fireworks display, usually held over the East River, has been televised nationwide on NBC, locally on WNBC TV since 1976. The fireworks display was returned to the Hudson River for the first time since 2000 to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Henry Hudson's exploring the river. The Boston Pops Orchestra has hosted a music and fireworks show over the Charles River Esplanade called the Boston Pops Fireworks Spectacular annually since 1974. Cannons are traditionally fired during the 1812 overture, and the event was broadcast nationally from 1991 until 2002 on A&E, and since 2002 by CBS and its Boston station, WBZ-TV. Broadcasting the event locally, and from 2002 through 2012, CBS would broadcast the final hour of concert nationally in prime time. The national broadcast was put on hiatus beginning in 2013, which Pop's executive producer David G. Mugar believed was the result of decreasing viewership caused by the NBC's encore presentation of the Macy's fireworks. The national broadcast was revived for 2016, expanding to 2 hours, and in 2017, Bloomberg Television took over the duty, with WHDH carrying the local coverage beginning in 2018. On the Capitol lawn in D.C., a Capitol Fourth, a free concert broadcast by PBS, NPR, and the American Forces Networks precedes the annual fireworks display and attracts over 500,000 people annually. But so, depending on how you celebrate it, the 2nd, the 4th, or even in August, we do love our 4th of July, and we are the United
Can you call
States
it
of
4th
America.
of July if you do it in August?
I wouldn't. I just call it Independence Day.
And I think August would be much harder to do fireworks because it tends to be hotter and drier.
Yeah, it'd be more
I
of a
think
fire risk.
I think we'd have less fireworks if they did it in August.
Yeah. So I would say let's keep it as the 4th because everybody still celebrates it on the 4th. And it was when it was finally finished off. So as we're looking at the other options as far as that they have, the one great thing that they were talking about is the question of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence. There were, if I remember, it was like 53 signatures that had to be done. And the trick that they were having a problem with is how many of these people are actually there for the event. Because, again, you think about it, 13 colonies all up and down the East Coast. You had all these people meeting at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and they were running back and forth. It isn't like D.C. is now, where everybody basically can live in D.C. If you had business back in Georgia, you had to go all the way back down to Georgia, usually on a horse. If you had to take and finish up some more work up in Boston, well, you're not that far from Philadelphia. You can take care of that. 56 delegates to the Second Continental Congress were the signatories. Again, Thomas Jefferson helped with the committee of 5. The additional members for that committee, we'll pull up the list here. You had John Adams, you had Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman. Now, those guys, like it was mentioned, all got together to try to basically hash out what this declaration was going to be. The rough draft is actually right now currently held in the Library of Congress, while the engrossed copy is held in the National Archives building. And I don't think that they were allowed to use the actual copy in National Treasure.
Why not?
Because shooting at it in bulletproof glass, I don't think they could get that past the government.
It was perfectly safe.
Yeah, very, very safe. Right. We're just going to use a couple copies. Like I love the purpose. To announce and explain separation from Great Britain. Basically, we're telling you, screw off. But the Declaration, again, signed by 56 delegates to the Second Continental Congress, became known to the nation's founding fathers. Delegates from New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, and Providence plantations, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. The Declaration became one of the most circulated and widely reprinted documents in early American history. Also of interest, they've had a couple copies that were basically, one was sent to each of the colonies, have turned up.
Interesting.
One, if I remember right, was hidden behind a picture, and I bet that was probably quite the surprise. Hey, Dad, what's this behind the painting? Because if I remember right, the book value on something like that, don't even try eBay. The government would be immediate. Can we talk to you about what you just posted on eBay, please? I think we could probably hash out a deal with the Library of Congress on something like that. But as they go, after ratifying the text on the 4th, Congress issued the Declaration of Independence in several forms. It was initially published as the printed Dunlap broadside that was widely distributed and read to the public. Johnson's original draft is currently preserved at the Library of Congress. complete with changes made by Adams and Benjamin Franklin and Jefferson's notes of changes made by Congress. The best-known version of the Declaration is the signed copy now displayed at the National Archives in D.C., which is properly regarded as the official document. This copy, engrossed by Timothy Matlack, was ordered by Congress on July 19th and signed primarily on August the 2nd. Now, the Declaration justified the independence of the United States by listing 27 colonial grievances against King George III, and by asserting certain natural and legal rights, including the right of revolution. The original purpose was to announce independence, and referencing to the text of the Declaration were a few of the following years. Abraham Lincoln made it a centerpiece of his policies and his rhetoric in the Gettysburg Address in 1863, and since then it has become a well-known statement on human rights, particularly the second sentence: "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." This declaration has been made to guarantee equal rights for every person. Stephen Lucas called it one of the best-known sentences in the English language, with historian Joseph Ellis writing that the document contains the most potent and consequential words in American history. This passage came to represent a moral standard at which the United States should strive. The view was notably promoted by Lincoln, who considered the Declaration to be the foundation of political philosophy and argued that it is a statement of principles through which the United States Constitution should be interpreted. The Declaration of Independence inspired many similar documents in other countries, the first being in 1789, with the Declaration of United Belgian States, issued during the Bourbon Revolution in the Austrian Netherlands. It also served as the primary model for numerous declarations of independence in Europe, Latin America, Africa, and Oceania during the first half of the 19th century.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah. Now, the draft, interestingly enough, political maneuvering was setting the stage for the official declaration, even while the document was being written to explain the decision. On June 11th, 1776, Congress appointed the Committee of Five to draft the declaration. The committee took no minutes, so there is some uncertainty on how the drafting process proceeded. Contradictory accounts were written many years later by Jefferson and Adams, too many years to be regarded as entirely reliable, although their accounts are frequently cited. What is certain is that the committee discussed the general outline which the document should follow and then decided that Jefferson should write that first draft. The committee in general, and Jefferson in particular, thought that Adams should write the document, but Adams persuaded them to choose Jefferson and promised to consult with him personally.
Which he didn't do.
Jefferson largely wrote that Declaration of Independence, again in isolation from the Declaration House. Considering Congress's busy schedule, Jefferson probably had limited time for writing over these 17 days and likely wrote that first draft quickly. Now, examination of the text of the early Declaration drafts reflects the influence that John Locke and Thomas Paine, author of Common Sense, had on Jefferson. He then consulted the other members of the Committee of Five, who offered minor changes, and then produced another copy incorporating these alterations. The committee presented the copy to Congress on the 28th of June, 1776, and the title of the document was "A Declaration by the Representatives of the United States of America in General Congress Assembled." Now, Congress ordered that the draft lie on the table and then methodically edited Jefferson's primary document for the next 2 days, shortening it by a fourth, removing unnecessary wording, and improving sentence structure. They removed Jefferson's assertion that King George III had forced slavery onto the colonies in order to moderate the document and appease those in South Carolina and Georgia, both states which had significant involvement in the slave trade. Jefferson later wrote in his autobiography that the northern states were also supportive towards the clause's removal, for though the people had very few slaves themselves, yet they had been pretty considerable carriers of them to others. Johnson wrote that the Congress had mangled his draft version, but the Declaration was finally produced was the majestic document that inspired both contemporaries and posterity, in the words of his biographer, John Ferling. But as it is, this group of people were able to assemble the document. over the course of June and July, finishing it out in August. And they were able to put the state of ratification as July the 4th. And 56 delegates took it upon themselves to free the colonies and turn us into the United States of America. But this has been the Bearded Historian with Sue backing me up. You folks have a good evening, and y'all have a good night.